Deep in the forests of northern Thailand, there is said to be a village that does not appear on any map. The people there once practiced a forbidden ritual, burning human-shaped effigies to send death to another soul. But the elders warned of one rule. Never burn an effigy on the night without a moon. Because on that night, the fire may awaken something far more terrifying than death itself. Chapter 1. The Village Without a Name. In the northern mountains of Thailand, where thick forests swallow the sunlight and mist lingers between ancient teak trees, there is a village that most maps refuse to acknowledge. Travelers sometimes pass near the region, but very few ever enter the narrow dirt road that leads into the forest. Those who do often say the same strange thing later. They cannot remember exactly how they found the place. The villagers themselves rarely speak of the outside world. When strangers appear, conversations stop, doors close quietly, eyes follow every movement as if the outsider has stepped somewhere they should not be. The place has an old name. A name that predates the current generation. Ban Khon Tai. The Village of the Dead. No one remembers when the village was founded. The oldest houses lean crookedly toward the jungle, their wooden walls stained black by decades of rain and smoke. Small spirit shrines sit outside every home, filled with burned incense and wilted offerings. But there is something else in the village. Something people never speak about during the day. Every household keeps a small wooden box hidden somewhere in the house. Sometimes beneath the floorboards, sometimes wrapped in cloth and placed high on a shelf. Inside the box is usually the same thing. A human-shaped doll made from straw and thread. A burned effigy. Children are warned never to touch them. Adults pretend they do not exist. Yet everyone in the village knows what they are. They are Hun Phaon, curse effigies. Long ago, when anger ran deep and justice was rare, the villagers learned a forbidden ritual from wandering spirit masters. They discovered that if a doll was made in a person's likeness and burned while calling their name, misfortune would follow that person. Sometimes sickness. Sometimes madness. Sometimes death. But there was one rule older than the ritual itself. A rule spoken only in whispers. Never burn an effigy during the night of the black moon. Because on that night, the world of the living and the world of the wandering spirits become dangerously close. And the fire meant for one soul may call something else entirely. Something that does not understand human intention. Something that only understands hunger. For generations, the villagers obeyed the rule. Until one night, many years ago, someone forgot. And since then, when the moon disappears from the sky and the forest becomes too quiet, the elders of Ban Khon Tai still lock their doors early. Because sometimes, far in the jungle beyond the village, a small orange light can be seen drifting between the trees. Like a tiny fire searching the darkness. Searching for another effigy to burn. Chapter 2. The Box Beside the Body. Nira had not returned to Ban Khon Tai for 12 years. Not since the night her mother died and her father told her to leave the village and never come back. For years she lived in Chiang Mai, trying to forget the forests, the shrines, and the strange silence that always seemed to cling to the village like a shadow. But some places never truly let you go. The phone call came just before dawn. Her father was dead. No explanation, no details. Just 3 words spoken by a trembling voice on the other end of the line. Come home quickly. The journey back took almost an entire day. As the bus climbed deeper into the mountains, the air grew colder and the trees thicker. By the time Nira reached the narrow road leading into the village, the sun had already begun to sink behind the dark line of the forest. Ban Khon Tai looked exactly the same. The same crooked houses. The same wooden shrines. The same uneasy quiet. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Even the insects seemed reluctant to make noise. Her father's house stood at the edge of the village, close to the forest where the trees grew tall and tangled like twisted bones. A few villagers stood outside waiting for her, their faces pale, their eyes refusing to meet hers. Inside the house, the air smelled faintly of incense and something else. Something burned. Her father's body lay on a thin mat on the wooden floor. White cloth covered most of him, but his face remained exposed. The moment Nira saw him, her breath caught in her throat. His eyes were open, wide, frozen in an expression of pure terror. His mouth was stretched unnaturally, as if he had been screaming at the moment he died, but no one in the village had heard a single sound that night. A chill crept down Nira's spine. Something about his face felt wrong. Not the stillness of death, but the lingering presence of fear. Then she noticed the object placed beside his body. A small wooden box. Old. Charred around the edges. No one else in the room seemed willing to touch it. Slowly, Nira knelt beside her father and opened the lid. Inside the box lay a small straw effigy. Its body was twisted and blackened by fire. One arm had completely burned away. Thin red thread wrapped around its chest like veins. And on a small strip of yellow paper tied to its neck. A name had been written in trembling ink. Nira leaned closer, her heartbeat suddenly pounding in her ears. The name on the paper was not her father's. It was someone else from the village. But the effigy had already been burned. Half of it reduced to ash. As Nira stared at the doll, a terrible thought began forming in her mind. If this effigy had been burned, then someone in the village was meant to die. And yet the one lying dead on the floor was her father. Outside the house, the wind suddenly moved through the trees. For a brief moment, it almost sounded like something in the forest laughing.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The Blind Woman. The villagers refused to speak about the effigy. Whenever Nira asked questions, they avoided her eyes. Some simply walked away. Others muttered the same uneasy sentence before disappearing into their homes. Ask Mai Thong. No one said anything more. By late afternoon, Nira followed the narrow dirt path leading to the far end of the village where the forest grew thick and dark. The houses there were older, leaning slightly as if the jungle itself had begun pulling them back into the earth. Mai Thong's house was the last one. A small wooden hut raised on stilts, surrounded by dozens of faded spirit offerings, bowls of rice, wilted flowers, broken incense sticks. Wind chimes made from old bones hung from the porch roof, clattering softly whenever the wind moved. The sound made Nira's skin crawl. She stepped onto the creaking wooden steps and called out, "Mai Thong?" No answer. Only the sound of the forest breathing behind her. Then a voice came from inside the house. Old, dry, and unsettlingly calm. "I was wondering when the daughter of the dead man would come." Nira stepped inside. The hut smelled of herbs, ash, and something faintly rotten. In the center of the room sat a thin old woman cross-legged on the floor. Her long gray hair hung loosely over her shoulders. Her eyes were clouded white, completely blind, yet her head turned slowly as Nira entered, perfectly aware of exactly where she stood. Mai Thong raised one trembling hand. "Bring it closer." Nira hesitated. Then she placed the burned effigy from the wooden box into the old woman's hands. The moment Mai Thong touched it, her entire body stiffened. Her fingers trembled. The air inside the hut suddenly felt colder. After a long silence, the old woman whispered something under her breath in an ancient dialect Nira barely recognized. Then Mai Thong spoke. "He did it." Nira frowned. "Did what?" The old woman slowly lifted her blank white eyes. "Your father burned an effigy." Nira felt her stomach twist. "That doesn't make sense. The name on it wasn't his." Mai Thong nodded slowly. "Yes. That is why he is dead." A long silence filled the hut. Outside, the wind began rustling through the trees like something large moving through the leaves. Nira forced herself to speak. "What do you mean?" The old woman's voice dropped into a whisper. "There are rules to the ritual. Rules that even the spirit masters feared to break." Her thin fingers tightened around the charred effigy. Then she said the words that made Nira's blood turn cold. "Your father burned this, during the night of the black moon." The wind outside suddenly stopped. Completely. Mai Thong slowly turned her head toward the dark forest beyond the walls. And for the first time since Nira arrived, fear crept into the old woman's voice. When an effigy burns on that night, she swallowed. You do not call death to a person. Her pale lips trembled. You call something that feeds on the fire itself. And once it is called, Mae Thong whispered one final sentence. It never leaves the village. Chapter 4. The Effigy Ritual. The night settled heavily over Ban Khon Tai. Darkness in the village was different from the darkness in the city. Here, the forest seemed to swallow the light itself. The lantern hanging in Mae Thong's hut barely pushed back the shadows, leaving the corners of the room thick with blackness. Nira sat across from the blind woman, the burned effigy resting between them on the wooden floor. Mae Thong's thin fingers traced the charred straw slowly, as if reading a story written in ashes. You want to understand why your father died, the old woman said quietly. Nira nodded. Then you must understand the ritual he tried to perform. The wind outside rustled through the trees again, low and uneasy. Mae Thong reached beside her and pulled out a small woven basket. Inside were strange objects, dried herbs, scraps of yellow paper, red thread, and a handful of dark soil wrapped carefully in cloth. This, she said, touching the soil, comes from the grave of someone who died violently. Nira felt a chill run down her arms. The effigy is never just straw, Mae Thong continued. It must carry pieces of death. She began explaining the ritual slowly. First, a small human figure is made from straw or dried grass. It must be shaped carefully, arms, legs, head, until it resembles a crude body. Then something belonging to the target is attached. Hair, nails, a piece of clothing, anything that once touched their life. The name of that person is written on yellow spirit paper and tied around the effigy's neck with red thread. But the most important part. Mae Thong lifted a thin finger. The earth. She opened the cloth bundle. The soil inside was black and damp. Grave soil binds the spirit world to the ritual, she whispered. It allows the curse to travel. Nira felt her throat grow dry. So when the effigy is burned, the person dies? Mae Thong nodded slowly. If the ritual is done correctly. She paused. Then her voice lowered. But the fire must be controlled. The spirits must be invited carefully. Her head turned toward the forest again. That is why there is one rule. Nira already knew what she would say. Never burn an effigy on the night of the black moon. Mae Thong's voice became softer. Because that is when the barrier between worlds grows thin. When the moon disappears, the dead wander freely. The lantern flame flickered violently for a moment. Mae Thong tightened her grip on the burned doll. If an effigy burns that night, she whispered, the ritual no longer belongs to the person performing it. Something else hears the call. Nira leaned forward. What kind of thing? The old woman was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke a name that had not been said in the village for decades. The fire Kresu. The lantern light trembled again. Mae Thong continued. It is not a spirit, and it is not human. It is hunger given shape by fire. When it awakens, it does not care whose name is written on the effigy. Her blind eyes lifted toward Nira. It only cares that something is burning. The room felt colder. Nira swallowed. If my father called it. Mae Thong nodded slowly. Then the fire has already begun to spread. Outside the hut, somewhere deep in the forest, a faint orange glow flickered briefly between the trees. Like a small flame drifting slowly through the darkness. Searching for something else to burn.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The First Death. That night, the village did not sleep. A strange tension hung in the air after Nira left Mae Thong's hut. Even the animals seemed uneasy. Dogs refused to bark. Chickens remained silent in their coops. The forest surrounding Ban Khon Tai felt unnaturally still, as if something within it was waiting. Nira lay awake inside her father's house, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the old wooden walls made her flinch. Every whisper of wind through the trees made her listen harder. Mae Thong's words repeated endlessly in her mind. The fire Kresu. Hunger given shape by fire. She tried to convince herself it was only an old village superstition. A story meant to scare people away from forbidden rituals. But the burned effigy on the table beside her bed made it difficult to ignore. The charred straw seemed darker under the lantern light, as if the fire that touched it had never truly died. Hours passed. Then sometime after midnight, a scream shattered the silence of the village. It came from somewhere down the dirt road. High, sharp, and filled with absolute terror. Nira shot upright in bed. Another scream followed. Then frantic voices. Doors opened. Footsteps pounded against the ground outside. Lanterns flickered to life across the village as people rushed toward the sound. Nira grabbed the lantern and ran outside. The villagers had gathered in front of a small house near the center of Ban Khon Tai. Some stood frozen in place. Others whispered prayers under their breath. No one dared step inside. Nira pushed through the crowd. What happened? Someone whispered a name. Prasit. Prasit was a farmer who lived alone. He had been alive only hours earlier. Now he was dead. The inside of the house smelled faintly of smoke. Prasit's body lay sprawled on the wooden floor. Just like her father. His eyes were wide open. His mouth stretched into a silent scream. But what made the villagers step back in horror was the black mark on his chest. A small, perfectly round burn. No larger than a coin. The skin around it had blistered and cracked, as if a tiny flame had burned straight through his body from the inside. Nira felt her heartbeat quicken. Then she remembered something. The effigy. She turned slowly toward the doorway. Mai Thong had arrived. The blind woman stood silently, her pale eyes staring at nothing. But her face looked grim. 3 days, she whispered. A few villagers turned toward her. What? Mai Thong spoke again. When an effigy is burned, death follows within 3 days. The room fell silent. Nira felt cold dread spread through her chest. The effigy her father burned. The name written on it. Prasit. A man in the back of the room suddenly spoke in a trembling voice. But Prasit wasn't the one who burned it. Mai Thong nodded slowly. That is why this is only the beginning. A cold wind passed through the house. The lantern flame flickered violently. Then Mai Thong spoke the words that made everyone in the room freeze. When the fire Kresu answers the ritual, it does not stop with one soul. Somewhere deep in the forest beyond the village, a faint orange glow drifted slowly between the trees. And this time, it was moving closer. Chapter 6. The Effigies Beneath the Earth. After Prasit's death, fear spread through Ban Khon Tai like a sickness. By morning, no one worked in the fields. The market stalls remained empty. Even the children stayed inside their homes, their curious voices replaced by whispers behind wooden walls. The villagers gathered in small groups, speaking in low tones. Some blamed Nira's father. Some blamed the old ritual. Others refused to speak at all. But everyone felt the same thing. Something in the village had awakened. Nira could feel it too. The air itself felt heavier, as if the forest surrounding Ban Khon Tai had begun to press inward. That afternoon, she returned to her father's house. The wooden box with the burned effigy still sat on the table where she had left it. The blackened doll looked smaller now, fragile, like something that had already fulfilled its purpose. But Mai Thong's warning echoed in her mind. This is only the beginning. Nira walked slowly through the house, searching for anything her father might have left behind. Letters. Notes. Anything. But the house was strangely empty. Too empty. Her father had been a careful man. He kept records of everything: crop payments, village debts, even the weather during harvest seasons. Yet now there was nothing. No papers. No books. It was as if someone had removed them. Or as if he had hidden them. Nira stepped outside. Behind the house was a small clearing where her father once kept chickens. The old co-op now stood broken, half swallowed by weeds and creeping vines. But something about the ground caught her attention. The soil looked disturbed. Fresh. Uneven. As if it had been dug recently. A strange unease crept over her. She found a rusted shovel leaning against the back wall of the house. The metal was cold in her hands. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she began to dig. The earth was softer than she expected. After only a few minutes, the shovel struck something beneath the soil. Wood. Her heart began to pound. Neera dropped to her knees and cleared the dirt away with her hands. It was a small wooden box, just like the one that held the burned effigy. But this one was sealed. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside lay another straw effigy. This one had not been burned. The red thread around its body was still bright. A strip of yellow paper hung from its neck. A name was written there. Someone who lived in the village. Neera's breath grew shallow. She quickly dug again. More boxes appeared beneath the earth. One after another. 5, 7, 10. Each one containing another effigy. Each one with a different name. Her hands shook as she opened them. Some of the names belonged to people who had died many years ago. But others belonged to villagers who were still alive. Neera's chest tightened with dread. Her father had not made just one effigy. He had made dozens. Then suddenly she noticed something else. One of the effigies was already burned. Half of its body blackened and cracked by fire. The name tied around its neck was Prasit. Neera felt the blood drain from her face. If Prasit's effigy had been burned, and the others were still buried here, that meant only one thing. More deaths were coming. Behind her, the forest rustled softly. Neera froze. Slowly, she turned toward the trees. For a brief moment, deep between the trunks, she saw a faint orange glow. Small. Floating. Like a piece of fire drifting silently through the darkness. Watching. Waiting. And somewhere in the distance, a low, whispering sound echoed through the forest. It almost sounded like someone breathing. Or something hungry.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. The Names of the Living. Neera did not sleep that night. The effigies she had unearthed lay scattered across the wooden floor of her father's house. In the dim lantern light, their twisted straw bodies cast thin, crooked shadows against the walls, making them look almost alive. She counted them again. 23. 23 effigies, each tied with red thread and marked with a name. Some names belonged to villagers who had died years ago, people whose funerals Neera faintly remembered from her childhood. Farmers, fishermen, an old shopkeeper who used to give candy to children. But the rest belonged to people still living in Ban Khon Tai. Her hands trembled as she picked one up. The straw figure was crudely shaped, its body tightly bound with thread. The yellow paper tied around its neck fluttered slightly in the warm air from the lantern. The name written on it made her heart drop. Somchai. Somchai was the village butcher. He lived only a few houses away. Alive. For now. Neera swallowed and picked up another effigy. Another name. Another villager. Then another. And another. A terrible pattern began to form. These were not random. They were people who had argued with her father over the years. People who had cheated him in trade. People who had spoken badly about him. Or threatened him. Neera's chest tightened. Her father had been making effigies for revenge. But if that were true, why had he buried them instead of burning them? She turned toward the only burned one among them. Prasit. The straw figure was blackened and brittle, the fire having eaten half of its body. And Prasit was now dead. Neera's mind raced. Had her father changed his mind about the ritual? Had he planned to destroy them? Or had something stopped him? Suddenly, a faint sound reached her ears. A soft knock. 3 taps. Cock. Coc. Coc. Neera froze. The sound came from the front door. Her heart began to pound slowly. No one in Ban Khon Tai visited houses this late. Not after what had happened to Prasit. The knock came again. Cock. Coc. Coc. Slow. Patient. Almost polite. Neera stood up carefully and grabbed the lantern. The effigies on the floor rustled slightly as she stepped past them. For a moment, she thought she heard something else. A faint crackling sound. Like straw slowly burning. She reached the door. The wood felt cold beneath her hand. "Who's there?" she asked quietly. No answer. Only silence. Nira hesitated, then slowly opened the door. The dirt path outside was empty. The village was dark and still. But something lay on the wooden steps just outside. A small object. Nira lowered the lantern. Her stomach twisted instantly. It was a straw effigy. Blackened. Burned. Smoke still rising faintly from its body. The red thread around it had melted and fused into the charred straw. A yellow paper strip hung from its neck. The ink had blurred slightly from heat, but the name was still readable. Nira felt the lantern shake in her hand as she read it. Somchai. The same name she had seen on the unburned effigy inside the house. A cold realization crawled through her mind. The effigy buried beneath the earth had not been burned. But somewhere, someone else had made another one. And they had already set it on fire. Behind her, inside the house, the buried effigies suddenly shifted slightly on the floor. A dry rustling sound filled the room. Almost like dozens of tiny straw bodies slowly turning toward the door. Toward the night. Toward the forest. Where a faint orange glow drifted silently between the trees. Closer than before. Chapter 8. The Thing in the Forest. Somchai died before sunrise. The news spread through Ban Khon Tai like wildfire. Some villagers claimed they heard him screaming in the middle of the night. Others swore they had seen a strange orange light moving through the trees behind his house just moments before the scream began. But when people finally dared to enter his home at dawn, the screaming had already stopped. Nira arrived with the others. She already knew what she would see. And she was right. Somchai lay on the wooden floor beside his bed. His body twisted unnaturally. His eyes wide open, staring at something no one else could see. His mouth frozen in a silent scream. And on the center of his chest, a burn mark. Perfectly round. Small. But the skin around it had split open, as if a flame had burst outward from inside his body. Just like Persit. The villagers began whispering prayers. Some backed away from the house as if death itself might still be inside. Maid Thong stood quietly near the doorway. Her blind eyes tilted slightly toward Somchai's body. Then she spoke. "It is feeding." The words made the room fall silent. Nira stepped closer to her. "Feeding on what?" Maid Thong's thin lips trembled. "Fire." She raised one shaking hand toward the forest. When the effigy burns, the flame opens a path. And something follows the path to the name written on it. A young man in the crowd spoke nervously. "You mean a spirit?" Maid Thong shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A spirit remembers who it once was. What walks in the forest now has never been human." A shiver spread through the villagers. Outside, the wind began moving through the trees. The forest surrounding Ban Khon Tai seemed darker than usual, the shadows between the trunks thick and endless. Maid Thong continued. The fire Kresu was born many generations ago. During the first black moon ritual. She turned slightly toward Nira. Someone burned an effigy that night, just like your father. And the fire called something ancient from the forest. Nira felt her chest tighten. What happened to it? Maid Thong's voice became quiet. The elders sealed it. They buried the ashes of the ritual deep beneath the forest shrine. But fire does not truly die. She pointed slowly toward the jungle beyond the village. It only waits. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a child standing near the doorway suddenly gasped. His small finger pointed toward the trees. Everyone turned. Deep within the forest, something moved. A faint orange light drifted between the trunks, floating slowly through the darkness, like a burning lantern with no one holding it. But as the villagers stared, the light suddenly split into several smaller flames, each one drifting in a different direction through the trees, like sparks carried by the wind. Maid Thong's face grew pale. They're multiplying. Nira felt a chill crawl down her spine. What does that mean? The old woman whispered the answer. It means the fire has found more names. Behind them, somewhere in the village, a dog suddenly began howling. Then another. Then another. And far in the distance, a faint crackling sound echoed through the forest, like dozens of tiny fires slowly beginning to burn.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. The Buried Secret. The fear in Ban Khon Tai was no longer hidden. After Somchai's death, people locked their doors before sunset. Windows were sealed with wooden planks. No lanterns were left burning outside at night. The village had become a place of whispers and shadows. Everyone knew something terrible had returned, but no one knew how to stop it. Nira stood outside Mae Thong's hut as the evening fog slowly rolled down from the forest. The air smelled damp and heavy, like soil after rain, or like the breath of something ancient rising from beneath the earth. Inside the hut, Mae Thong sat beside a small shrine made from old wood and blackened stone. A single candle flickered in front of it. Nira placed one of the buried effigies on the floor between them. There are 23 of them, she said quietly. Names of people still living in the village. Mae Thong did not touch the effigy. Instead, her blind eyes stared toward the forest. Your father knew, she whispered. Knew what? That the fire would return. Nira frowned. That doesn't make sense. If he knew, why would he burn the effigy in the first place? Mae Thong slowly reached beside her and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. A thin, worn notebook. The paper was yellow with age. She handed it to Nira. This belonged to your grandfather. Nira opened the notebook carefully. Inside were pages filled with handwritten Thai script, faded but still readable. Some pages contained strange diagrams, circles, symbols, and rough drawings of human-shaped dolls tied with thread. But one page caught her attention immediately. A drawing of a large spirit shrine deep in the forest. Underneath it were several lines of writing. Nira read them slowly. The ashes of the first ritual were buried beneath the shrine of the old banyan tree. Fire must never return there. If the ashes awaken, the hunger will spread. Nira looked up. What does that mean? Mae Thong answered softly. Long ago, the elders destroyed the first effigy that summoned the fire Kresu. They burned it completely. But the ashes were still dangerous. So they buried them beneath the forest shrine. Nira's stomach tightened. Then why would my father burn another effigy? Mae Thong was silent for a moment. Then she said something that made Nira's blood run cold. Because someone had already disturbed the ashes. The wind outside suddenly grew stronger. Branches scraped against the walls of the hut. Nira stared at the notebook again. Disturbed them how? Mae Thong slowly turned her head toward the jungle. Someone went to the shrine. Someone dug beneath it. And whatever was buried there woke up. At that exact moment, a sudden scream echoed through the village. Another one. Then the frantic sound of people shouting. Nira jumped to her feet. Not again. But Mae Thong did not move. Her pale face had gone completely still. No, the old woman whispered. This is worse. Nira looked at her. What do you mean? Mae Thong lifted one trembling hand toward the forest. Listen. Nira held her breath. At first she heard nothing. Then slowly, a strange sound drifted through the trees. Not a scream. Not footsteps. But something softer. A low crackling noise. Like dry straw burning. Then another. And another. The sound was spreading through the forest. All around the village. As if many small fires had begun to burn at the same time. Mae Thong's voice barely rose above a whisper. The ashes are waking. And somewhere deep in the darkness beyond the trees, something began to laugh. Chapter 10. The Path of Fire. The screaming came from the eastern side of the village. Nira ran through the narrow dirt paths with the other villagers. Lantern light bouncing wildly against the wooden houses. Panic had spread like a storm. People shouted names, calling for family members, dragging children inside, slamming doors. But the sound that frightened everyone most was not the screaming. It was the crackling. A dry, creeping sound moving through the darkness. Like fire slowly chewing through straw. When Nira reached the eastern edge of Ban Khon Tai, a small crowd had already gathered outside a house. No one dared to go inside. A man stood near the doorway, shaking violently. It wasn't there before, he kept repeating. I swear it wasn't there. Nira pushed forward. What happened? The man pointed inside. With my own eyes, I saw it appear. Nira stepped through the doorway. The room smelled faintly of smoke. Not strong, not like a real fire. Just a thin scent of burning straw. In the center of the floor lay a straw effigy. It was not fully burned. But its chest had begun to glow faintly red, like embers hidden beneath ash. Nira felt her breath catch. The name tied around its neck trembled slightly as heat rose from the small figure. She leaned closer to read it. Anon. A young fisherman who lived alone near the river. Nira stood up quickly. Where is Anon? No one answered. Outside, the villagers began shouting again. Someone ran down the road, lantern swinging wildly. I found him. The words cut through the night. Nira ran. The villagers followed. They reached the riverbank where Anon's small fishing hut stood beside the water. The door hung open. Inside, the lantern on the wall still burned. Anon's body lay on the ground beside his bed. His face was frozen in horror. His eyes stared upward at something that had never been seen by anyone else. And on the center of his chest, the same small burn mark. Round. Black. Perfectly clean. The villagers backed away in terror. Someone whispered a prayer. Another person began crying. 3 deaths. 3 nights. And the fire was spreading. Nira turned slowly toward the forest. The trees beyond the river moved strangely in the wind. And there, between the trunks, she saw it again. But this time it was clearer. The orange glow was no longer small. It was larger now. And inside the fire, shapes moved. For a moment, Nira thought she saw something impossible. Faces. Dozens of faint human faces twisting inside the flame. Mouths open. Eyes wide. Like souls trapped inside a burning cage. She stumbled backward. Maithong's voice echoed in her memory. It feeds on the fire. And every effigy burned gives it another soul. Suddenly the glowing fire in the forest began drifting closer. Slowly. Silently. As if it had finally decided to leave the trees. And come into the village itself. The wind died completely. The lantern flames across Ban Khon Tai flickered weakly. Then one by one, they began to go out.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Truth in Ashes. By the next morning, Ban Khon Tai had become a village of ghosts. No smoke rose from cooking fires. No farmers walked toward the fields. The narrow dirt roads that once carried quiet morning chatter were now empty. Everyone stayed inside. Everyone waited. 3 deaths and 3 nights had shattered whatever calm the villagers once had. And worst of all, no one knew whose name would burn next. Nira sat alone inside her father's house. The old notebook from her grandfather spread open on the floor beside her. Around her, the unearthed effigies lay in a silent circle like witnesses to something terrible that had already begun. Outside, the sky was gray with low clouds pressing down over the forest. The air felt suffocating. She read the notebook again, carefully this time. The pages described rituals, warnings, fragments of stories from decades ago. Some passages were written in hurried handwriting, as if the writer had been afraid someone might find the book. But one section had been written slowly and clearly. Nira read the words aloud under her breath. The fire Kresu cannot be killed once awakened. It can only be starved. Her eyes moved to the next line. It feeds on cursed flames. Every effigy burned becomes another door. Nira's stomach tightened. A sudden realization crept through her mind. If the creature fed on burning effigies, then the deaths were not random. Someone was still burning them. She quickly counted the dolls around her again. 23. One burned, Prasit. Another burned, Samchai. Another burned, anon. 3 dead. 3 effigies destroyed. But the rest were still here. Unburned. That meant the new effigies appearing each night were not coming from this house. Someone else was making them. Someone else was continuing the ritual. Nira stood up slowly. Her heart began to pound. There was something she had missed. She walked toward her father's old desk in the corner of the room. The drawers were empty when she checked them before, but now she noticed something strange. One drawer did not close properly. She pulled it open again and ran her hand along the inside. Her fingers brushed against a thin wooden panel. A false bottom. Carefully, she lifted it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. Her father's handwriting covered the page. The ink looked rushed, uneven, as if written in great fear. Nira unfolded it and began to read. If you are reading this, Nira, then I have already failed. Her breath caught. Someone went to the old shrine in the forest. They dug beneath the banyan tree and uncovered the ashes of the first effigy. I tried to seal it again. But the fire had already begun to move. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the final lines. I burned an effigy to trap the fire in one soul. But I made a terrible mistake. The ritual was performed on the night of the black moon. The fire was not trapped. It was awakened. Nira felt the air leave her lungs. But the last sentence was the worst. The one who disturbed the ashes is still in the village. Her eyes widened. Someone in Ban Khon Tai had started this. Someone was still feeding the fire. At that moment, a loud knock struck the front door. 3 slow taps. Cock. 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 Nira froze. The exact same knock she had heard the night Somchai's effigy appeared. Her heart hammered in her chest. Slowly, she turned toward the door. But before she could move, another sound came from outside. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A faint crackling noise. Like straw catching fire. And just beyond the thin wooden wall, a dim orange glow slowly began to grow. Chapter 12. The Fire Beneath the Skin. The orange glow outside the door flickered like a living thing. Nira stood frozen in the center of the room, the letter from her father trembling in her hands. The knock had stopped, but the strange crackling sound continued just beyond the wooden walls. Soft. Slow. Like something burning very close by. She forced herself to breathe. Then she walked carefully toward the door. Every step felt heavy, as if the air inside the house had thickened. The glow outside grew brighter. The thin wooden boards of the door began to reflect the faint color of fire. Nira stopped just inches away. Her hand hovered over the handle. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer. Only silence. And the quiet crackle of something burning. Her fingers tightened. Slowly, she opened the door. The cold night air rushed inside. The path outside was empty. But on the wooden steps sat another straw effigy. It was still burning. Not with large flames. Just a small orange glow spreading slowly through its body. Like embers buried inside dry straw. Thin smoke curled into the night air. Nira crouched carefully and lifted the lantern. The yellow strip of paper tied around the effigy's neck fluttered slightly in the breeze. A name was written there. Her stomach tightened as she read it. Kiet. Kiet was the village blacksmith. A strong man who lived near the edge of the forest. Alive. For now. The glowing inside the effigy suddenly brightened. Nira felt heat brush against her face. For a moment she had the terrible feeling that the small burning doll was breathing. Then suddenly the glow spread across its chest. The straw cracked softly. And the ember inside pulsed once. Nira's heart skipped. She knew what was coming. Without thinking, she grabbed the effigy and threw it to the ground, trying to stomp the ember out. But the fire did not behave like normal flames. The glowing light vanished instantly, leaving only blackened straw behind. As if the fire had never been there at all. Nira stepped back, breathing hard. The night had gone completely silent. Then somewhere across the village, a scream erupted. It came from the direction of the blacksmith's house. Nira ran, lantern swinging wildly in her hand. Villagers were already spilling into the street, panic rising again. They knew what the scream meant. When Nira reached Kiet's house, the door had already been forced open. People crowded outside but refused to enter. One of them whispered in terror. It happened again. Nira pushed past them. Inside, the smell of burnt metal filled the room. Kiet lay on the floor beside his forge. His massive body twisted unnaturally. His eyes wide. His mouth stretched open in a silent cry. And on his chest, the same burn mark. Round. Black. Perfect. But this time something was different. Thin cracks ran outward from the burn across his skin. Like veins filled with fire had spread through his body before he died. The villagers stared in horror. Mei Thong slowly stepped inside. Her blind face tilted toward the body. Then she spoke quietly. It is growing stronger. Nira looked at her. How? Mei Thong's voice trembled. Because it is no longer feeding only on the fire. She slowly raised her shaking hand toward Kiet's chest. It has begun feeding on the soul beneath the skin. The villagers gasped. Outside, the forest wind began to rise again. The trees swayed violently. And somewhere deep within the jungle, the orange fire returned. But now it was larger than ever. A swirling mass of burning light. Inside it, the shapes of human faces twisted endlessly in silent screams. And slowly, very slowly, it began drifting toward the center of the village.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The One Who Opened the Grave. The fire in the forest no longer tried to hide. That night, the orange glow burned clearly between the trees surrounding Ban Khon Tai. It moved slowly, drifting through the darkness like a wandering spirit. But now everyone in the village could see it. People huddled inside their homes, whispering prayers. No one dared step outside. Except Nira. She stood in the empty road at the center of the village, staring toward the forest where the fire swirled between the trunks like a living storm. Mei Thong stood beside her. The blind woman's face looked older than ever, her thin shoulders trembling slightly as the wind pushed through the trees. It has grown too strong, she whispered. Nira tightened her grip on the lantern. Then we had to stop it. Mei Thong shook her head slowly. It cannot be stopped the way you think. The old woman pointed her thin finger toward the jungle. That fire did not awaken by accident. Nira turned to her. You said someone dug up the ashes beneath the shrine. Mei Thong nodded. Yes. Nira's voice grew tense. Then someone in this village started all of this. The blind woman did not answer. But the silence between them became heavy. Then she said quietly. Yes. A cold realization crawled through Nira's chest. You know who it is. Mei Thong's face tightened. For a long moment, she remained silent. Then she spoke a single name. Sambun. Nira frowned. Sambun? The name felt distant in her memory. Then it came back to her. Sambun was the village caretaker of the old forest shrine. A quiet man who rarely spoke to anyone. He had been responsible for maintaining the offerings beneath the ancient banyan tree for many years. Nira's heart began to pound. If he guards the shrine, why would he dig up the ashes? Mei Thong's voice lowered. Because he did not believe the old stories. She turned her blind eyes toward the forest. Some people fear power. Others want to control it. The wind suddenly howled through the trees. The orange fire flared brighter in the distance. Nira felt dread rising in her chest. Where is Sambun now? Mei Thong's lips tightened. He disappeared 3 nights ago. The exact same night. Prasid died. Nira's blood ran cold. You mean? Mei Thong nodded slowly. He woke the ashes. And when the fire answered, he realized what he had done. The old woman raised one trembling hand toward the forest. But by then, the flames in the jungle suddenly surged violently. The orange glow expanded, lighting up the dark trunks of the trees. For a brief moment, Nira saw something moving inside the burning mass. A human shape. walking slowly within the fire. Her voice shook. Is that him? Maid Thong's face turned pale. Yes. Nira's breath caught. You mean Sambun is controlling it? Maid Thong shook her head. No. Her voice dropped into a whisper. He is not controlling it. The fire in the forest pulsed again. And the human silhouette inside twisted unnaturally. As if something inside the flames were wearing his body like a shell. Maid Thong finished her sentence. He is what the fire is wearing now. The wind died suddenly. The entire village fell silent. Then the burning figure inside the forest began moving. Not wandering anymore. Not drifting. Walking. Slowly. Directly toward the village. Toward Ban Khon Tai. And every step it took left small patches of glowing embers on the forest floor behind it. Chapter 14. The Circle of Ash. The burning figure reached the edge of Ban Khon Tai just before midnight. No one in the village slept. From behind shuttered windows and cracked doorframes, frightened eyes watched as the orange glow approached slowly through the forest. The trees closest to the village began to smoke. Dry leaves curled inward as heat passed through them. Yet strangely, nothing actually burned. The fire did not spread like normal flames. It moved with purpose. Like a creature. Nira stood in the empty road with Maid Thong beside her. The lantern in her hand trembled slightly as the glowing shape stepped out from the darkness of the jungle. For a moment, the entire village saw it clearly. Sambun. Or what remained of him. His body walked stiffly, as if pulled by invisible strings. His skin had turned dark and cracked, glowing faintly beneath the surface like charcoal that had not yet cooled. His eyes were open. But inside them, only fire burned. And surrounding his body, swirling in the air like living smoke, were dozens of faint human faces trapped inside the flame. Souls. The souls of those who had died. Prasit. Samchai. Anan. Kiet. Their mouths opened and closed silently inside the burning glow. Nira felt her chest tighten. Maid Thong's voice trembled beside her. The fire has taken them. The burning figure stopped in the center of the village. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Sambun's head tilted slowly. The voice that came from his mouth did not belong to a human. It sounded like several voices speaking at once. Cracked. Dry. Hungry. More names? The wind blew cold through the village. The burning figure raised one blackened hand. And from inside the swirling fire around him, straw effigies began falling to the ground. 1, 2, 5, 10. Dozens of them scattered across the dirt road like dead insects. Each one tied with red thread. Each one marked with a name. The villagers gasped in horror. The fire had learned. It no longer needed someone to make the effigies. It could create them itself. Maid Thong stepped forward suddenly. We must end this now. Nira turned toward her. How? The blind woman pointed toward the ground. The fire was born from the ashes of the first ritual. Only a stronger ritual can seal it again. Nira looked at the scattered effigies. What ritual? Maid Thong spoke quietly. A circle of ash. Nira remembered the drawings in her grandfather's notebook. A ritual meant to trap spirits. But that would require burning them all. Maid Thong nodded. Yes. Her voice grew weaker. And someone must stand inside the circle to hold the fire there. Nira's stomach tightened. What happens to the person inside? Maid Thong did not answer immediately. Instead, she slowly turned her blind eyes toward Nira. You already know. The answer hung heavy in the cold air. The fire creature suddenly moved again. The burning faces inside it twisted violently. More effigies fell to the ground. More names. More lives waiting to burn. Nira looked down at the dolls scattered across the road. Then she looked toward the towering mass of flame wearing Sambun's body. If the effigies burned one by one, the fire would never stop feeding. The only way to end it was to burn them all at once. And someone had to stand at the center, holding the fire in place. Nira slowly stepped forward. Mae Thong's voice cracked. Nira, don't. But Nira had already made her decision. She picked up one of the effigies and placed it on the ground. Then another. And another. Soon the straw figures formed a rough circle around her feet. The wind grew stronger. The fire creature began moving toward her. The trapped faces inside the flames screamed silently. Nira looked up at it and whispered quietly to herself, "If fire wants a soul." She struck the lantern against the ground. The flame burst outward, lighting the circle of effigies instantly. Then she stepped into the center. "Then it will take mine."
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The Fire That Never Died. The circle ignited instantly. Flames leapt from one straw effigy to the next, racing around Nira like a ring of hungry serpents. The dry straw burned fast, crackling violently as the red threads tightened and snapped in the heat. Within seconds, the entire circle had become a wall of fire. The villagers cried out in terror. Mae Thong screamed Nira's name. But Nira did not move. She stood at the center of the burning ring, the heat pressing against her skin like a living force. The flames roared around her, their light reflecting in her eyes. Across the road, the fire creature stopped. The burning mass surrounding Sambun's body pulsed violently. For the first time since it had entered the village, it hesitated. The circle of ash was forming, exactly as the old ritual described. The fire could not cross the boundary once it was sealed. But the creature was not afraid. It was hungry. And the soul standing inside the circle burned brighter than all the effigies combined. Sambun's body jerked forward. The creature stepped closer. The trapped faces inside the swirling fire began to twist violently, their silent screams filling the air like a storm of invisible voices. The flames around Nira grew higher. The straw effigies collapsed into glowing ash. And the circle slowly closed. Mae Thong dropped to her knees outside the ring. Her blind eyes streamed with tears. "The ash, hold the ash." Nira understood. She kicked the burning remains outward with her foot, spreading the glowing ash into a complete circle around her. The moment the circle closed, the wind stopped. The fire creature lunged forward. But as it reached the edge of the circle, something unseen pushed against it. The flames recoiled violently. The creature shrieked. The sound was not human. It was the sound of fire being forced back into darkness. Sambun's body twisted horribly as the fire tried to break through the barrier. But the ash held. The ritual had worked. The creature was trapped. Now there was only one step left. Nira closed her eyes. She remembered the final line written in her grandfather's notebook. The fire must consume the heart of the circle. Only then would the ritual seal. Slowly, she knelt in the center of the burning ash. Outside the ring, the villagers cried out in horror. Mae Thong reached forward helplessly. But she could not cross the circle. The flames around Nira rose higher. The trapped faces inside the fire creature screamed silently as it began collapsing inward. The fire was being pulled into the center. Pulled toward her. Toward the final offering. Nira whispered softly. For the village. The flames surged. The ash circle glowed bright orange. And then, everything went dark. When the sun rose the next morning, Ban Khon Tai was silent. The fire was gone. The strange orange glow no longer haunted the forest. The air felt lighter. The villagers slowly gathered near the center of the road. All that remained of the ritual was a large patch of blackened earth. At its center lay a small pile of gray ash. And beside it, a single straw effigy, half burned. The villagers stared in silence. Mae Thong stepped forward slowly. Her blind fingers touched the small doll. The yellow strip of paper tied around its neck trembled slightly in the wind. A name had been written there. She whispered it quietly. Nira. The villagers lowered their heads. The fire had been sealed. The curse was over. Or so they believed. Years later, travelers passing near the mountains sometimes hear strange stories about a forgotten village deep in the forest. Some say the place no longer exists. Others claim the people there still avoid lighting fires during nights without a moon. Because on those nights, deep in the forest, a small orange flame can sometimes be seen drifting silently between the trees. Not large, not violent, just a tiny wandering ember, moving slowly through the darkness, searching, waiting, for someone, somewhere, to burn another effigy. The villagers believed the curse ended the night the fire was sealed. But some say fire never truly dies. Even the smallest ember can wait silently in the dark. And on moonless nights, deep in the forest, a small orange flame is sometimes seen drifting between the trees, still searching for another effigy to burn. Fire.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.